so much everyone who's joining us. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Emily Higley and Clara Hiskey from the University of Leeds. Their short paper, Supporting Students to Use AI Safely and Effectively, Reflections on a Pilot Workshop Series for Taught Students.
I'm on. Hi everyone. Come on, Clara, we're doing it. My name is Emily, this is Clara. We are learning advisors at the University of Leeds. We work in the learning development team with taught students, so undergrads and taught postgrads. We are talking today about some workshops that we have done to help students think about how they're going to be using AI for their studies. So just to give you a quick bit of background before we get into the detail of those workshops, we design these workshops to fit into our co-curricular offer, so things that go alongside the curriculum, not embedded within the curriculum. That means these sessions are open to any student coming from any subject within the university. These are one of our main offers for taught students in terms of how they're going to find out about university guidance and sort of what the university says they can and can't do about using generative AI. As with many universities, we've been trying out what we're going to do, how we're going to support students with using generative AI and AI in general. So this was one of our sort of initial ideas that we had alongside other stuff like a website and bits and bobs, was this pilot project to test a series of 4 sessions for our taught students. And Clara's going to take you through those titles.
So we ran 3 workshops and 1 drop-in session looking at the Leeds Generative AI guidelines. The 3 workshops were on the topic, firstly, of exploring ethics in AI, evaluating Gen AI outputs, and getting the most out of Gen AI tools. So we're going to give an overview of the contents of these 3 workshops, like just a little snapshot of what they involved, and then discuss our reflections and the kind of challenges that we encountered delivering those. So yeah, as Emily mentioned, this was kind of like a pilot week. We ran it after Easter. We told students at the start of the session that this was a pilot and that we were going to be collecting their feedback from the sessions. Like the rest of our co-curricular programme, we tried to design them to be really student-centred and centering the students' prior experience with AI throughout the sessions as well. So I'm just going to begin by saying a bit more about our Exploring Ethics in AI session. So in the context of AI, obviously there's lots of different areas relating to ethics that could have been relevant. And we specifically wanted to look at kind of issues relating to social justice and representation from AI, and thinking about AI generative AI output through a decolonial lens. So the workshop started with, first of all, understanding how does AI work, and actually that was true across all 3 of the workshops, as a way of kind of precursing, helping students understand the limitations and why those limitations exist. And then we also had discussions around what do we mean by ethics within the context of this workshop, and what do we mean by decolonisation, and drawing on students' prior understanding of decolonisation, so we could apply that during the activities. So what we were looking for in this workshop is understanding how the way that AI works can basically reinforce stereotypes, and how we can work to kind of challenge forms of discrimination and oppression in relation to that. So we have 2 main activities as part of this workshop. This one, examining bias in AI outputs. So we had 3 different images generated from AI and 1 piece of text. They were all from Copilot because that's the Gen AI that we recommend that students use. Yes, so we ask students to analyse these images and these texts using that kind of decolonial lens. So what I think I'd like to do is just give you a moment, maybe have a chat to your neighbour, because you might be falling asleep at this part in the afternoon. Have a look at these images. This was in response to the prompt, show me a picture of an academic librarian. So how are these representations problematic? What message does this create about the people, cultures, objects portrayed? And what message does this send to someone without knowledge of the context? This particular activity wasn't one that we created. We looked at a lot of examples of that other people had created, and the questions were taken out of one, so those are referenced in our slides. But yes, these are the questions that students answered in the session, so I'll give you a moment to have a chat with a neighbour about this. Unfortunately, we didn't get a workshop slot, so I probably shouldn't let you speak too long. Anyone want to share what you were discussing? What I think you were shocked by or interested by? Right, exactly. Yeah, so kind of conforming to a stereotype, looking at here right now, I can say this is maybe not representative of how librarians look. Or dress, yeah. So we were asking students to critically examine these images, it was a really interesting activity, and I think Emily and I were both really impressed with how much they critically engaged with this content. And it was interesting because we often run critical thinking and critical reading workshops, but within this workshop, there was a lot of critical thinking happening without us talking explicitly about what was going on. And students brought a lot of kind of insight and their own cynicism as well, which was quite refreshing. One of the interesting parts of this activity was we'd also asked it to produce an image of someone in prison, and that raised lots of kind of challenges, even more so from a race perspective. So it led to actually led to a lot of conversations before we even ran the workshop about kind of dealing with these topics sensitively, and that's something I'll mention later if we have time too. The second main activity in this workshop was getting students to apply this more, thinking about how does everything we've discussed actually affect their own academic work. So we asked them to log into Copilot and ask for researchers on a specific topic relating to their subject area, and then to look at that list and think about how representative is this list, whose voices are not being heard, what knowledge can I bring to this to help me unpack what is going on here, what is missing. And students, again, really took to that activity. So there was a student from China who immediately said these educational researchers are not representative of the knowledge field that I'm dealing with. They're not going to help me understand the context that I've asked them to. So they were critically analysing and thinking really carefully about the content that it was producing. I'm going to pass over to Emily now for the next workshop.
Yeah, thanks. I think that one was such a rich workshop. It was really full of really interesting, deep discussion. The next workshop that we did was this second one here called Evaluating Generative AI Outputs. So this one was just had a different focus. So really looking at the outputs of generative AI and assessing them for essentially trustworthiness, so fact-checking, looking for what are the telltale signs of sort of AI outputs, where you're not maybe expecting to see AI outputs, but then also arming people with the tools and techniques to be able to verify and fact-check the outputs that they are getting and generating. So these are the learning outcomes that we used for this session. So again, starting off with that introduction to how generative AI works, which we thought it's just really important for people to really just have a baseline understanding of that in all of our workshops, so that they're really just coming into these workshops and understanding it doesn't think, it's not making decisions, it is just doing like probability-based text or image generation, and therefore it's very problematic. So then we spent most of the workshop talking about the consequences of using AI information uncritically. And then we spent a lot of time talking about strategies for how you might fact check outputs, and this was really practical. So if we want to go on to the next slide, this is one of the activities that we did. Now, we were really hoping that we would try and do this one with you here. I think it's going to be quite difficult to actually have a good guess at the distance that you've all got today. One of these images is AI generated, one of them is a real photograph. Would anybody like to hazard a guess as to which one is the AI image? I'm seeing some points to the left side. Is anyone going to point to the right side? Yeah, okay. Oh, we sort of split that side of the room, thinks it's one, and that's interesting. If you click on one more time, it is the left side image, and it is much easier to see it if you're up close to the image. There's loads of small details that when you get up close, the textures are all wrong, like the guy's backpack sort of melts into his shoulder, there's all sorts of bits like this. In the session, one of our students said, you cannot stand in that place and take that photo of the Golden Gate Bridge. It is actually like geographically not possible, which was great. I had to go and check on Street View later, and she was right, you can't actually get that photo in real life. So that was really interesting actually. And again, we were able to have a really good discussion. We did some image-based stuff, and we did some text-based activities as well. So asking it to tell us things and then trying out techniques to verify that information. So going and searching untrusted sources, going and looking up references, etc., etc. And what we did with the students was we had a big whiteboard and we built ourselves a checklist of things that you would do to fact check textual information and things that you would do to fact check images as well. So including things like reverse image searching, checking out the textures, counting the fingers, etc., etc. So again, really, really useful, valuable, practical session. And then the third session that we had was, again, on a totally different sort of angle on AI. So this was looking at productivity and effective study and stuff like that with generative AI. And these are the learning objectives that we went for here. So this was really about the process of prompting. Some people would call this prompt engineering, if we want to get fancy. It's just talking to it and getting an output and adjusting your input to get a better output and going through that. So if we go on the next slide, we used a specific prompting framework, which is gaining a bit of traction in our university. Lots of the academics are sort of looking at this and using this and practicing this, so we thought let's see what the students think of it. So it's a 4-part prompt framework. You tell the AI who it is, what its task is, what your requirements are, and what specific things it needs to do that. And the activity was to first of all think about how they would word a prompt, and then to reframe it in this way. See what the differences are, see if that's effective, see if it's worth the time taken to put it in the framework and stuff like that. So it was quite interesting. Some of the students really got on well with this framework. Others found it sort of not useful for the applications that they would want to be using it for. Some students tried out using it in Copilot and then in ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and saw that there are differences between the models as well. So that was unexpected. We weren't going to ask them to do that. They did it anyway. And yeah, so that opened up a new discussion there as well. Okay, let's go.
So moving into our kind of evaluation of these workshops, we did have very low attendance, but there was really useful feedback from students. So like I said, we told them at the beginning that it was a pilot and we collected their feedback at the end of the session. The idea was that we could kind of test it out as much as for us as for the students, because it was it was our first time delivering this content, and we wanted to roll it out in the next semester more widely. So students, there was positive feedback from all students, and certainly from observations during the class, students were all very engaged in the activities. They had a lot to say about how they were already using AI, and they engaged a lot in particular with the kind of critical analysis of AI, those kind of productive tasks of developing prompts to create more ethical, more useful, more reliable results. We realised that we needed to make some small changes to ensure, to kind of give better scaffolding, especially to the ethics workshop, because obviously there was some quite heavy content to cover at the start, to precursor the analysis of the materials, so for going more into decolonisation and what we mean by ethics within that context. And we also observed through teaching that one of the sessions could be a little bit more interactive, so thinking about ways to make sure that students are participating and talking to each other right from the start of the session, and wherever they can be contributing, that we're not just talking to them, but they're actually kind of there with us, almost like co-creating the session as it happens. We didn't situate ourselves as the experts on the topic of AI, so it was really important that we had that kind of two-way interaction. So in terms of the challenges for designing and teaching these workshops, I think one of the main things was the logistics. So as we've heard a lot today, obviously AI is constantly changing, and we kept finding examples of activities that sounded really worthwhile for kind of demonstrating the limitations of AI. But every time we tried them, they would give us different results. So for example, on some of the ones that were kind of demonstrating like stereotypes, regurgitating harmful images, we noticed that after a while something was built into the generative AI, which was making the images almost excessively diverse and kind of confusing. So that would have led to different conversations, like interesting conversations, but would fulfill different learning objectives. So we had to keep testing different activities and seeing what would happen if students did that activity within the session itself. Sensitively handling topics such as racial bias. I actually had a meeting with the decolonisation lead in the library to discuss how we would approach this topic with students in a sensitive way, and when we showed images that could have been that perpetuated harmful stereotypes, we made sure that we provided a kind of trigger warning for students, but ultimately we felt it was really important that we show these because they do come up frequently when you are generating images. We didn't want to ignore how students are actually using AI, so not go in with like an idealised view of kind of assuming that students wouldn't be using it for certain tasks. So it was really important for us that they felt they could be honest about how they were using it and that we could explore that and look at ways to develop it. We had to do research and upskill ourselves, so this is outside of the usual content that we teach. So that's important from the perspective of the team in general as well, teaching these.
Definitely. There were also some positive things. So as we've sort of alluded to throughout this session, students really made those sessions so valuable. We learned a lot from them because they were able to relate the activities to their own experiences of using generative AI and to their existing knowledge as well. It was amazing in the ethics session. One of the students, she was like, I've just done a whole module on decolonial theory. So she's bringing in all of this knowledge that she already had and was able to really share with the other students, what does the theory say about the impact of some of this stuff and the harms that it can do, etc., etc. And it was just amazing. There was some really interesting, deep, evaluative, critical discussions, which you would always hope for, but it really did just naturally happen within the sessions, which was really great. I think all of the workshops, I think in the team our sort of guiding ethos is not really, AI is always wonderful. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And the workshops really followed through with that. So we were sort of saying, is it always worthwhile? Is it too much faff? Is it too much hassle? Is it going to get you the outputs you're hoping for? Is it worth the effort that you would have to put in to adjust the outputs, etc.? And really the key message in all the workshops was you've got to know what you're looking for to be able to evaluate the outputs. So you can't spot misinformation if you don't know anything about the topic. You can't really critique something for bias if you haven't sort of considered what those potential biases could be, if you don't have any awareness of that kind of thing. So we really want to do more work there, I think, to help students really feel confident to start doing some of that work and start being able to apply their knowledge in these sorts of situations. So we are planning to rerun the workshops. We have actually already done that this week. Our digital learning advisors have taken them on from us, and they've gone into our digital capabilities workshop program, which is actually open to staff and students. So we've broadened the audience, and we had this week a really mixed group which had different conversations and different things going on, which was really great. Some of the feedback from students also said they would love other topics, so we've got 2 extra ones that we're going to try and put together. The do's and don'ts, we tried to have this Q&A session. Actually, only one student came and she didn't have any questions, so we couldn't do any answers. But I think they still want that, students. They want to know what's allowed and what's not allowed. So we will put something on for them for semester 1. And we're going to look at supporting them with literature searching and how AI fits into that as well. We're also thinking about how we can share some of this more widely, so maybe making some of these sessions open resources, maybe putting them on Learn Higher or somewhere like that, so that we are sort of, sharing the workload with other people as well. So that's it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if we went over time.